Good evening.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Warrenville Community Development and Planning Committee of the Whole regular meeting on Monday, March 14th, 2022. Deputy City Clerk Gravetti, may I please have the roll call?
Mayor Brummel?
Here.
Alderman Ashour?
Here.
Alderman Berry? Alderman Davalos?
Here.
Alderman Goodman?
Here.
Alderman Krischel?
Here.
Alderman Krokenberg?
Here.
Alderman Lockett?
Here.
Alderman Widener?
Here.
Staff? City Clerk Julie Clark?
Here.
City Treasurer, not here. City Administrator John Coakley?
Here.
Assistant City Administrator Christina White?
Here.
Community Economic Development Director Ron Menser?
Here.
Senior Civil Engineer Christine Hawking?
Here.
And Assistant Community Development Director Consuelo Argulis.
Here.
Is there any other staff that I missed? Okay. All right, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Will everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now's the time we set aside for citizens' comments. We'll hear any verbal or written comments from the public. Anyone wishing to speak, come to the podium, adjust the microphone, state your name and address, and go ahead with your comments. Is there anyone who has signed up for public comment this evening? Okay, and do we have any email comments? And I assume no one's on the phone who would like to make comments. Okay, great. Now it's time for officials and staff members' comments, beginning with Mayor Brummel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one thing I want to remind folks that we have a public information meeting this Wednesday evening, and Senior Civil Engineer Hawking is going to be the host for that. Can you give the details of how people might attend that? It's a virtual meeting, as I understand it, please.
Correct, yes. It's a virtual meeting using the same platform that we use for our virtual meetings for City Council. It is a requirement as part of the Idot process in terms of letting the public know about the construction. So for this project, we are going through the Idot process, and it will be going out to bid later this month with the bid opening at the end of April. So the requirement is to have this meeting before the April date, and we will go over the timeline of the project, the design, show some renderings, approximate construction schedule, and ask if there's any questions. It's a very informal meeting, but it is available to the public virtually.
Great, and that's about the Trailhead.
Sorry, the project is the Trailhead project.
That was good. You kept them in suspense until the end.
And the project is?
Yes. All right, Trailhead Project Public Information Meeting this Wednesday. It's a go-to meeting, virtual. You can sit in your living room and enjoy some comfort as you listen to the presentation and find out what we have planned coming up. And that's what I have for tonight. Thank you very much, Christine.
Thank you. Are there any other aldermen that would like to take a moment? Alderman Goodman.
Sure. I just wanted to let everybody know, if they hadn't seen already, that Fermilab now has a bison cam. So if you want to see the baby buffalo this spring, there is an online webcam pointed at the buffalo barn where you can go online on the Fermilab website and watch the buffalo. Should be fun. We can't get on site to see them, but they'll be on the camera when they wander into that area. You can move the camera back and forth. I've tried to see them a couple of times. They are probably hiding in the barn, mostly when it's been cold, but hopefully by the spring when they're out there calving, it'll be fun to see.
Okay, and that's available on the Fermilab website. Any other aldermen have any comments this evening? Alderman Davalos.
In response to Alderman Goodman, or maybe to ask Alderman Goodman, I get quite a few, well, that's wrong. I have gotten several requests about why we can't use Fermilab. And I try my best to explain. And I'm just about to call the Department of Energy or whatever that's got this thing. But do you have any idea? I know you're on the board, and do they ever talk about it? Is there ever, now that the pandemic is, we're slowly maybe moving away? I don't know.
So the answer to that is no. There are no immediate plans to reopen the site to the public, which is very disappointing. And I do hear about that frequently from people who would like to bike through there or fish or walk their dogs or, visit the buffalo or see the art or attend events. Fermilab is our backyard. It's part of our community. It's where our kids are raised. It's where we take people to learn about science and to tour the site and to be inspired by meeting scientists and ask questions at the Ask a Physicist event. And no, they have no plans to reopen anytime soon, and I think anyone who wants to call them and complain has my blessing.
Mayor, did you have a
Okay.
comment?
I have slightly better news. I've talked recently to two high-up officials in Fermilab. They are working on getting the lab open again, and I was encouraged to hear one of them tell me that his expectation was within the month, with a month's time. So, for what it's worth, unofficially. Shit.
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
Yes. Alderman Goodman, back to you.
Yes, I've spoken to several people about this, including the DOE head of the Fermilab site, who basically gets to make the decision. And he has said that at the moment, the problem is sort of from higher up, that the Department of Energy has closed the labs, and until the staff is allowed to return to work on site, they're not comfortable making exceptions for the public, even though I've repeatedly pointed out to him that outdoor usage don't have the same kind of COVID concerns that people working inside in a physics lab would have. Furthermore, they do intend, once they reopen, to dramatically tighten the security requirements so that access to the site is never going to be the way that it used to be, where people could come in and just say, I'm going to go see the buffalo and be allowed through the gates. Or show a driver's license and just walk in with your dog or something. They're going to make people have IDs. There will be check-ins and check-outs in order to be allowed site access. That has been planned, I think, since November of 2020, when they first told us about those plans at the Community Advisory Board. And it's going to take some time to implement that. We do have a March meeting, which I believe the mayor is going to be attending. But the last thing I heard from the Fermilab Community Advisory Board was, don't worry, we will not reopen the site without coming back to the Community Advisory Board and talking to you about how exactly we're going to do that. And I said, that's not what I was worried about. But yes, they have started allowing some more physicists on site. I spoke to my friend Art Kramer, who lives here in Warrenville, and who was able to go back on site without a specific invitation for the first time this month since the pandemic began, and he's an employee there. So it is gradually getting better, but we don't really know what that's going to look like yet.
Yeah,
All
the
the
encouraging,
officials-
I was going to say, the encouraging thing is that they are working on it. They anticipate reopening on some level. It will be restricted more than in the past, but they want to do it. So that's the good thing to hear. I'm sorry.
That is a very good thing, because the officials I've talked to have mentioned that it's the only facility of its kind in the world that allows public access. So when we do have admittance there, I guess count your blessings and be thankful that such a facility allows the public into their gates to recreate and enjoy the nice surroundings that are at that location. So, anyone else? City Administrator.
I don't have anything at this time. Thank you.
Okay, any other staff members or anyone have a comment? Okay, we'll begin the business of the meeting. And the first item this evening is consideration of the preferred Old Town redevelopment site number 2, preliminary site plan. Community and Economic Director Ron Menser will introduce this item. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening to the City Council and the Mayor. So the intent of bringing this item forward tonight is to allow staff to present and then address questions that the City Council may have on the preliminary redevelopment plan. Staff and the preliminary site planning advisory group have recommended or are recommending the city council endorse as the city's preferred preliminary redevelopment plan for the property. There's two components to the plan. There's the illustration and pictures that are on the screen at this point in time, and then there's a site plan. Both of those documents were included in the agenda packet backup. It was about a year ago, not quite a year ago, we started the preliminary site planning process. And over the last year, through a systematic outreach and involvement of our consultants, both the traffic engineering consultant and the planning consultant, outreach to the community. We had a public information meeting virtually last fall, and we've tried to get the word out through the city's newsletter and on our website. There's a project website page for this particular initiative. We also have had a couple of meetings with the advisory group that was established to help guide the process and act somewhat as a sounding board to kind of filter through all the information that staff and the consultants were providing on the property, evaluate a variety of different alternative site plans, consider the input that's been provided by the public, and ultimately that group made a recommendation to the city council. We've also reached out and had multiple meetings with the adjacent property owners. DuPage County Division of Transportation is important because they control the Warrenville Road frontage of the site. That section of Warrenville Road is under their jurisdiction. Ultimately, last Tuesday, the advisory group met, and the consensus recommendation of the advisory group was for the city council to approve the preliminary preferred redevelopment plan that I'm going to present tonight. And it's important to, from my perspective, that the city council ultimately approve a preliminary preferred plan for the property, because that preliminary preferred plan will allow staff and the city's engineering and environmental consultants to move forward with and develop and then ultimately implement a cost-effective and efficient remediation plan on the former gas station site that we control, which is at the corner of the overall redevelopment site. And additionally, that designation by the council will allow staff with confidence to reach out to desirable businesses and quality developers to see if they would have interest in being part of implementing the plan. And then finally, and I think as important as anything, is to effectively communicate the city's vision to the community in a manner that hopefully people can be excited about, and maybe some people in the community would actually want to consider opening a business at this location. So that's the goals for tonight, is hopefully get the council comfortable with either approving the plans that we're going to present as the preferred plan of the community, or providing feedback that we can go back and make adjustments to the plan and bring it back for your consideration. The illustrations on the board here, let me shrink it down so we can get the full picture. So as part of the site planning process, we looked at the type, we discussed and looked at the type of redevelopment that seemed to be appropriate at this location, given the input that was provided during the Old Town Civic Center sub-area planning process back in 2007. So we started out with this kind of mixed use 2- and 3-story building scenario. Some of the images that people were most comfortable evolved over time. I can tell you that the image in the top left-hand corner of the screen, the white 2-story buildings, received a lot of support by the advisory group and in the public meeting that we had. But generally, the form of development would be mixed-use buildings located up closer to the street. The buildings and the style of the buildings would be similar to what you would traditionally find in a small town, downtown area. They would be very pedestrian oriented, and by that I mean they would have large sidewalks out in front of them. They would have a lot of glass doors and windows that would invite people to look inside and be inviting to invite people into the buildings and businesses. a mixture of wood and brick, not real contemporary, more traditional downtown flavor to them, as opposed to what I would describe as a more auto-oriented type of development, and that's the kind of stuff that you would see out along Route 59, or another example would be the shopping multi-use or multi-tenant shopping plaza in the very southwest corner of Cantera. It's a newer version of what I would describe as a more auto-oriented property, big parking lots out in front of the buildings, and not as comfortable or inviting for the pedestrians. This is the site plan that the staff and the advisory group are recommending the city council endorse as the preferred site plan, redevelopment plan. I'll give you a couple highlights of some of the more important elements of the site plan from my perspective. Again, it shows these buildings up closer to the front property line of the site, both along the Batavia and Warrenville Road frontages. There's a lot of sidewalks and pedestrian and plaza accommodations made on this site plan to help improve and create a good access for both bicyclists and pedestrians. Between the buildings, on the end of the buildings, you'll note that there are what's described on the site plan as plaza spaces. Those are intended to make the area more attractive to businesses that would offer some type of food or beverage, cafe type things. The plaza space would ultimately be outdoor seating areas, ideally. The site plan shows a open space element at the corner of the property that would extend back into the property and occupy a big portion of the existing floodplain portion of the property. And that could be extended to include additional off-site floodplain areas as those areas become available to the city. Site plan does show parking along the Batavia Road frontage. There's like 18 spaces shown there. That's important to support the type of development that's shown on the graphic illustrations that were on the previous page, that more traditional small town flavor, small business type of use. In order to have new parking spaces, angled parking spaces along the Batavia Road frontage, the city would ultimately need to convert the existing free flow right turn lane from on westbound, people traveling westbound on Warrenville Road to northbound Batavia Road from a free flow right, which you kind of just, flow around the corner, you don't have to stop, to a always, this intersection would become an always stop condition. So people coming down Warrenville Road, people in automobiles would have to stop at a new stop bar and stop sign before they turned right. And at that point in time, they'd be moving much slower and methodically and have a much better opportunity to see people backing out of any angled parking spaces that were installed in that area. An ancillary benefit of making this an all-way stop is that the existing raised median that prevents people from turning north on Batavia Road when they're traveling east on north on Batavia Road when they're traveling east on Warrenville Road, that would go away. So these people making that movement can now turn north onto Batavia Road. Some other key elements of this site plan from my perspective are it clearly reflects the city's intent to coordinate access and parking needs with the two adjacent property owners, the Votel property on the east and the Warrenville Grove Animal Hospital on the west. The red line is the existing property line of the city-controlled property, and you can see it shows that there would be some expansion of potential parking onto the south edge of the animal hospital property and some kind of a shared parking access easement. And similarly, along the east side of the property, this solid red line is the current property line between the city and the Votel property. And what this plan reflects is the intent to try to work together to relocate that property line so you could end up with a shared parking area and access driveway that would serve both the needs of the motel property and the future redevelopment of the city's property. From my perspective, I think this plan is very reflective of the public input that the city has received both during the 2007 planning process and the planning process that we implemented to develop the plan. From all that input, it seems like there's a strong and broad support across the community for this type of redevelopment in this area of the community. Certainly, this type of redevelopment would, I think, enhance the character of this area and make it more attractive to additional quality and desirable private investment in the future. The plan does preserve a big portion of the existing open space. The existing floodplain is public open space, which I think is a huge, could be a huge amenity for the community long term. And it definitely improves the pedestrian and bicycle access and safety in the area. The intersection would be much safer for both pedestrians and bicyclists as a three-way stop condition. You can see there's a plan to extend the 10-foot wide existing multi-use trail along the bridge to the intersection, and then sidewalks north, off-street sidewalks north along the Batavia Road frontages of the property. And then from a bikeway standpoint, there are existing 5-foot wide bike shoulders along both sides of Batavia Road. North of this property that stop, they don't extend all the way down to the Batavia Road intersection, and this plan does accommodate and illustrate the goal to extend those bike shoulders down to the Warrenville Road intersection. Because of the width of the road down in this area along the site, the existing curb lines wouldn't need to be moved to accommodate that. The existing traffic lanes are like 16 feet wide, which is much wider than it's actually necessary to move traffic. Up further to the north, the through lanes of Batavia Road are closer to 10 feet wide, so we would be able to extend those bike shoulders all the way down to the intersection without completely reconstructing that section of the roadway. So with that, I address any questions that the council may have about the information I provided, or any of the information included in the backup, which includes the traffic study that we had performed on the property to evaluate how the intersection in this area would operate if this property was to develop or be redeveloped in this form. And there's also a summary of all of the public input that has been received throughout the site planning process, not just at the virtual public meeting we held, but leading up to that meeting, and then after the meeting we've continued to receive input, and we've tried to capture the essence of that public input in that public input document that's included in the agenda backup.
Thank you very much, Director Menser. Are there questions and comments from the council members, beginning with Alderman Goodman?
Just one very quick comment about changing it to a three-way stop. Am I understanding correctly that they think people from River Road will be able to still turn left once there's a long backup of cars at that stop sign? It strikes me as something that's sort of difficult to do even now, and with a further delay, I don't.
Yeah, River Road, there will be no changes to River Road. Left-hand turn movements are allowed at this point in time from River Road to westbound Warrenville Road. As part of the traffic analysis, the city's traffic consultant did collect existing traffic data during the entire day, including the peak hours. They multiplied that by 125% because of COVID, and they're trying to be conservative in their projections to get a baseline level of traffic. Then they added all the additional traffic that would be projected to be developed by or added to the system by this, and then there's a increase factor up to year 2027 to add additional background growth traffic. And even under that scenario, they didn't project that cars would be backing up through that River Road intersection. They talked about the cars on Batavia Road would be extending slightly, but they did not anticipate or project, based on their modeling, that cars on Warrenville Road would back up through the River Road intersection.
So not even, I mean, the Batavia to River Road is not very far. I mean, even if you had just sort of 2 or 3 cars backed up there, I feel like it
It's
would
like
go-
140 feet.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can get 6, 7, 8 cars there.
I defer to
Depending how close they
the
got to each
traffic
other.
analyst's expertise. It just very surprising to me. Thank you.
So if I could just speak to that, one of the things we have included in the upcoming budget as expenses that would allow the city to grind off the existing median at that intersection and then install a new stop bar and a temporary, well, it wouldn't be temporary, it would be a stop sign. It would look like a normal stop sign, and then restripe that corner so that it's not the free flow right. There'd be a stripe out there that would make it a little sharper turn. And then we also have money in the budget to allow us to have the city's traffic engineer to actually evaluate the operation of that new 3-way stop sign before we would say that that's something that is a good idea and it should be a permanent improvement in that area. So there would be a report done and we'd bring that information back for the city council's consideration before we would make a final decision on whether or not that 3-way stop is something that would be appropriate at that location. But I can tell you and assure you that we've had detailed discussions with the traffic engineer, and it's their opinion that it will operate effectively.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Ashour?
If you're gonna do that, it might be worthwhile having them put the same flashers that are on the other signs, because that's gonna be a big change.
Yeah, that would be a very good idea, I think, to call attention to it, yeah.
Alderman Davalos?
Thank you. The blue dotted line is the floodplain, right?
There's 2 lines. There's on the left side of the screen for the most part, that's the edge of the 100-year floodplain, and on the east side is the edge of the floodway. And from a regulatory standpoint, they're different. In the floodway, you're very, very restricted on what you can do. In the floodplain, you can move the floodplain boundary around as long as you do it in the proper way.
Okay, so I see it circling around hotels there. So if that building wasn't there, then nobody could build in that spot because it's a.
It goes around the Votels because the Votels is like an island that's
Oh,
just
okay.
above. The
Okay.
floodplain in this area,
Okay.
for the most part, like the gas station site, is what I would call very shallow floodplain. It's on the top edge of the 100-year floodplain.
Okay.
So it rarely floods, and when it does, up to the 100-year floodplain, it's shallow. It's not feet deep. It's, inches to a foot deep.
Yeah. And so the entrance off of Warrenville Road, the right turn on the west side of hotels, if that was full of cars, they could get their vehicles and make that 90 turn to the right into their big door? I guess they would, or you probably talked to them about it. It just looks tight, but
On the side of their building, you're talking about
on
that
the side
door?
of their building,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
this
understanding there's a
plan was-
big door.
This plan was designed to ensure that
Okay.
they would be able to effectively access that side door.
So the line that is our property that goes through the corner by the road of hotels, will that ever be the property line again, or we'd have to see what the,
Like, are you talking about the thinner red line, this one here?
oh boy.
Like
The one that, if you look at the word Warrenville Road and you see where you would turn right, either to go to hotels or to go to that other parking lot,
Uh-huh,
the red line sort of goes right through their property.
the big thick red line?
I guess,
I'm pointing to it
Yeah.
on this,
yeah, I
that's
only
where-
see one red line, so.
okay.
I'm talking about right down here toward the street. Will we ever get that back?
Well, right now, that's our property, so the thought
we're
process is
just
if
letting
the
them use
city
that.
council endorses this,
Right.
then staff will work with the ownership of the Votels property to start negotiating some type of a land exchange, land improvement
Okay.
agreement that would work towards relocating that property line so that it would actually run down the middle of what would be a new shared parking and access drive improvement.
Okay. And we would try to market this whole piece of land. We're not going to piecemeal do this.
No,
We're gonna-
I think
hopefully
there's,
find a
that's
developer.
a discussion to be had. I think
Yeah.
they're might be some value to considering marketing the project, but in the foreseeable future, marketing the north end of the project,
Okay.
because it could be developed as a first phase if there's some desirable use that wanted to locate on that. That part of the property is not contaminated, so we're not going to be working on that one for the next 2 years. It could be available for redevelopment, and if we could attract the desirable use to that, with that use knowing what the city's working on and committed to, that might help then attract more interest to the rest of the property down the road. So I think that's a discussion we're going to have
Sure.
to have down the road, but I wouldn't say that this is set up for just one developer to do that. That might be an option, but might be developed incrementally.
Sure. Okay, thanks. That's great.
At any point, did the discussion of dropping the speed limit along there? I mean, I know the stop signs will slow people down temporarily, but that is a 35-mile-an-hour zone, I think. Is there any changes expected, or is it too early to?
Honestly,
think
we
about that?
didn't. We did not have the city's traffic engineer look at that. His biggest concern was the speed of traffic that kind of circulates around that existing right turn lane, and that needed to be slowed to a stop condition, because that would create gaps in the traffic for people to back out and give drivers a better opportunity to be aware of what's happening around that corner, rather than right now. If you watch what happens down there, not everybody, but there's plenty of people that come down the hill and they're moving at a good clip, in probably many cases more than 35 miles per hour when they get to the bottom of the hill, and they circulate around that corner at a higher rate of speed than you might imagine, unless you're sitting down there watching it. I'm not saying it's everybody, but there's plenty of people that are going around that corner trying to get to work or get home, and are getting around that corner pretty efficiently.
Yes, that I believe deserves a lot of study and attention, because at certain speeds, if you're trying to make an area pedestrian-friendly, certain speeds will cause a fatality more than likely than if you had a lower speed
Right,
limit. And
yeah.
I think when you try to make an area pedestrian-friendly, you owe it to the pedestrians you're trying to accommodate to, have a speed limit that if they are struck, they have a possibility of surviving the incident. And then the parking, will that be accessible to the people who want to enjoy the open space or have access to the river? Because I know Warrenville Grove Forest Preserve, sometimes that lot is filled up with recreational users.
Well, I think that would be that would be a decision and a discussion the city council would have to have when we get closer to actually redeveloping and potentially selling parts of the property to individual private people. Because if there's going to be some type of public access rights to some of those parking spaces, which I think is a very good idea, that we'd want to reserve some type of easement rights that would allow that to happen. I know I've talked to people in the community that have parked over behind the Al's Pizza on the private property, and that's not something that's generally welcomed over there. So and then people try to get on the path down there. So I think since we do own this, it would be good to reserve some right for the public to park in this area and know that they wouldn't be trespassing technically.
Okay, thank you. I believe the mayor has some thoughts.
Thank you. Great looking plan, Ron. I know a lot has gone into getting us to this point. Two things that I'd like to point out is, one, the excitement in the community to see something developed here is very high. So this is something that's supported by the community. The second thing is that we've been very careful to accommodate the existing businesses. That has been another concern of the community. For the animal hospital, the parking along the outside would be a great help to them. Their biggest problem is parking. This would give them additional parking. They give up a little bit of their property to do that. The city compromises a little bit of ours, and they get a benefit. And then from the hotel's point of view, as long as they wish to stay there, this new plan puts them in a good position to stay there. And they're protected, their business is protected, and the integrity of their property has been maintained. But in the future, if they decide to sell or sell to the city, this plan accommodates a new situation on that property. So it's versatile. That's really has a lot. I'm proud of the foresight in developing it the way it's been developed to protect those that are there and to plan for the future also. So it's a pretty exciting plan. And again, the people in the community that I've talked to say, let's do it. When can we get started? We're excited to see it. So well done.
Thank you.
Alderman Ashower.
I don't know that anybody's taken the time to do it, but looking at the buildings that used to be there, the Wingren property, the Johnson property, and the existing structures at the gas station, it looks to me like there's probably not any more ground coverage of structures with the new plan than there was. But that's,
We have been looking at that, and the amount of impervious area collectively probably will be less than what you put all those things together, the Wangren Johnson and this property, this plan, primarily because almost the entire site the entire gas station was impervious, so we're actually probably going to end up with less impervious area on the property when it's all said and done.
Thank you. If there's no other comments, is there anyone who would care to make a motion on this item?
I would like to, I move to recommend the city council accept the Old Town redevelopment site number 2 preliminary site planning advisory group recommendation and designate the February 22nd, 2022 preferred concept B redevelopment plan and the August 2nd, 2021 precedent imagery examples prepared by Kimley Horn as the city's preferred preliminary redevelopment plans for Old Town redevelopment site number 2 property.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we can go ahead with a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And I'd just like to thank Director Menser for his leadership and enthusiasm on this project, too. It's something I think the whole community will look forward to seeing as it's developed. Thank you. Our next item is consideration of staff's recommendation to begin recruitment for the communications coordinator position prior to May 1st, 2022. An assistant city administrator, Christina White, is here with us this evening to discuss this item. Christina.
Thank you. In your packet is a memo from me with additional information outlining the need for the position. I won't reiterate all of it, but key points being this position was included in the staffing and services study that was previously completed. There was strong support for this position among the council, the staff, the focus group members that participated in that study, and I think there's a need for this position across the city with our desire to have more proactive and consistent communication and outreach with the public. The reason for requesting to recruit early is that there is a length of time to recruit for open positions. Among the non-sworn, it's generally about 90 days or 3 months to fill a position. So we would like to request that those efforts begin a little bit sooner, knowing that the May 1st budget year has not started yet. While the position is not considered authorized or funded until the budget is approved for fiscal year 23 and the authorized strength ordinance is also approved for fiscal year 23, we would ask that if there is any kind of indecision or not in favor of the position overall among the council, that we not move forward with early recruiting because we don't want to advertise and market for a position. There's a staff element of time to doing the marketing and recruiting for any open position. So we would ask that if you're going to consider approving the early recruitment, this is likely the last opportunity to really object to the position unless something drastic changes and it gets removed from the budget. With that, I'd answer any questions.
And just as far as precedence has gone, we've done this type of thing on several other occasions that I can think of. I can't remember the name of the positions that we've done this for, but this is not the first time we've handled this type of request.
We've done it not regularly, but there have been the most recent, I believe, were the 2 public works worker positions that were recently approved for early recruitment.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? Alderman Goodman?
I strongly support this action. My recollection of the analysis done during the staffing study is that this position was sort of priority 1A, 1B, and 1C from the residents, and also I think the elected officials and staff who participated in the staffing and services study. So I would like to have this person hired 2 years ago. That would be great. So just my opinion. Thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman Davalos.
Yeah, do we have to change the motion if we're going to say that we are approving the position? Or we're just, that it's just to be understood?
I don't think we need to amend the motion at this point. You're authorizing staff to go ahead with the recruiting. The official action of approving the budget and the authorized strength ordinance in April would effectively autharize the position officially.
Okay, thanks.
That was a good segue. Would you like to carry on with that thought?
Of course.
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to recommend the city council direct staff to proceed with early recruitment of the communications coordinator position with an anticipated start date of May 1st, 2022.
Second, Alderman.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. If there's no other discussion and I don't see anyone raising their hand, we'll go ahead with a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We all look forward to meeting and seeing this position filled. So, we'll move along to the next item, which is consideration of change orders for the Mackroad Bridge and multi-use path preliminary engineering agreement. Senior Civil Engineer Christine Hocking will introduce this topic.
Thank you, Chairman. The preliminary engineering contract for the Mackroad trail portion of the project was approved back in 2017. Subsequently, because we needed to reconstruct the bridge portion of the contract was approved in 2019. Since then, we've been moving ahead with preliminary engineering plans, and there's been extensive Idot review, as well as extensive coordination with the residents, including 2 resident meetings. The first change order is directly related to the bridge and the comments from Idot. The comments from Idot included requiring additional survey on the south side of the road due to requiring clearance in the right-of-way, cutting down any trees in the right-of-way for safety clearance, as well as adding a 3-foot shoulder on the south side. There is no shoulder right now on the south side of Mackroad. Because of these changes, we needed to also coordinate with the Forest Preserve District in any adjustments that were made closer to the bridge on their property or closer to their property. Because of all of these extra coordination design changes, additional survey plans had to be updated, the project development report had to be updated, and all of these items were not included in the original scope from 2019. So change order 1 is in the amount of $39,277, and it is covered under the STP bridge funding, which is funded at 80-20, 80 federal, 20 local dollars. And so that comes to about $7,800 for the local costs. Change order 2 is directly related to the trail, and that was the extensive resident coordination that we had with the residents back. We had the 2020 public meeting, and then in 2021, we had additional individual meetings with the residents. We created plans showing the design on their property. We also met with them, obviously discussed any changes. We made updates to those plans. Those are individual plan sheets. And then after we collectively met with them, we had to update the plans overall. All of that additional time spent, changes to the plans, coordination back with Idot was not in the original scope for that trail contract. So the change order number 2 is related to all that additional work in the amount of $9,960. The trail portion of the project is funded by STP funds. However, those STP funds only cover construction and construction engineering costs. Preliminary and final engineering is fully funded by the city. All the copies of the change orders, including The hours spent by the consultants are in the agenda backup materials, and staff has negotiated with these consultants on these change orders to ensure that it's an appropriate amount for the additional work that they did for all of these changes. So staff recommends approving these change orders.
Questions or comments from Alderman Davlos?
Yeah, I just want to clarify this. So the Forest Preserve is letting us put a 3-foot shoulder?
It is all within the right-of-way.
Oh, it's on
city
the
right-
right-of-way. Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
There's some additional work by the bridge that is on the Forest Preserve property. It's not work, it's clearances for, because the bridge is widening, some of the trees that they had wanted, are very large, older trees, wanted some protection, so the designer had to kind of try and accommodate that request.
Okay, and can I just ask, up at Route 59, the little map you have, it shows that little cross, that little green going along the side of Route 59. So you can get to the path from either where the two green lines come together or where the green line starts. You can walk down that little segue to the path.
Let me just.
It's just the air, I don't know how you cross 59 exactly. Where is it? Is it going to be close to, like if you're coming west
On Mackroad.
on
towards
Mack?
Route 59.
Would it be a straight go across into
Straight
those?
to
Okay.
go across. There might be a little jog because on the northeast corner of Mack Road and Route 59, depending on how the traffic lights posts get reconfigured.
Okay.
So it might jog like just slightly a little south to get
Okay,
closer
so-
to the road.
So that's what
in
that
that
little
area.
piece of green, that little part of the green line coming, looks like it's going south on the opposite side of Route 59.
On the west side. So it's just showing that there will be a pedestrian crosswalk, which is
Okay.
currently not there.
And it will be on which side of Route, I mean, it'll be a crosswalk on the west side.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
So there'll be a
thanks.
crosswalk on the west side and then obviously a crosswalk on the north leg of.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Across the intersection. So it's a little
Okay,
deceiving.
thanks. Yeah.
Are there other questions or comments? Okay. If not, would someone care to make a motion?
Heck, I lost my place.
I'd like to make a motion as soon as I find it. My bad. Oh, I'd like to make a motion, the city council pass resolutions approving change order 1 in an amount of $39,277, and change order number 2 in the amount of $9,960 with Engineering Resource Associates for preliminary engineering services for the Mackroad Bridge and Multi-Use Path Project.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hocking. And the next item, consideration of amended local agency agreement with Idot for Mackroad Bridge and Multi-Use Path Preliminary Engineering. This item, again, will be presented by Christine Hocking.
Thank you. As described in the summary, this item is related to the previous item agenda, change order number 1. Because of the use of STP bridge funding, federal funding, an agreement with IDOT that requires the local community to approve the amount of the local costs. So this is just an agreement between the city and IDOT regarding the local costs.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments? Okay, if not, Alderman Goodman.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the City Council pass a resolution approving the amended local agency agreement for federal participation for the Mack Road Path and Bridge Replacement Project, which involves the cost sharing of $31,421.60 in federal funds and $7,855.40 in local funds for preliminary bridge-related engineering design costs.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Our next item is consideration of a change order for Route 56 Streetscape Construction Engineering Agreement. And again, Senior Civil Engineer Christine Hocking will present this item. Christine?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously, everyone knows that this project is well complete, but we are still trying to close out the Idot process. In doing so, the engineering resource associates brought forth to us this change order request for the additional inspection that occurred on the project. They ended up taking 36 more working days than originally expected. The original amount was 50. And because of that, they obviously had more hours of inspection on the site. In addition, there was some street lighting near the bridge that had to be redesigned and updated after being installed due to new IDOT requirements that also required additional inspection by the city's consultant. This change order is an amount of $29,543 and will be fully funded by the city. There is no additional ITEP money available for this project. It was all used for the construction. If you have any questions, I'd like to take them now.
Any questions or comments? Alderman Goodman?
No questions. I mean, the fact that this project has been completed a long time and we still haven't been, I think, billed by the state for some money that we still owe to reimburse.
That's the other Route 56.
That's the other Route
That's the
56.
additional added street lanes project that was done back in 2000 what?
Basically, everybody is very slow with their bills and
Yes.
with paying their bills on anything that has to do with Route 56 anywhere. So with that in mind, this does not surprise me at all. So I would like to make a motion to recommend the City Council pass resolutions approving the change order in an amount of $29,543 with Engineering Resource Associates for construction engineering services for the final phase of the Route 56 Streetscape Enhancement Project.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Alderman Lockett, I saw your hand up. Did you have a comment or anything? Okay, thank you. Mayor has a comment?
Just by way of clarification, we've done a lot of business with ERA. They are a very reliable vendor, so that their expectation of being paid for this is certainly fair from staff's perspective, right?
Yes, that is correct.
We use them a lot, and they've done a good job.
They've
for
done a
us.
good job. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead with a vote then. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. And we're on to the next item. Consideration of application to 2022 ComEd Green Region Program for the Trailhead Project. And again, Senior Civil Engineer Hocking will introduce this item. Christine?
Thank you. I bet a lot of you were surprised to see ComEd, Trailhead, and grants all in the same sentence or summary. However, staff identified this grant opportunity for specifically the Trailhead project because it checked all the boxes for the grant. The grant is for pollinator spaces, climate resiliency, and Trailhead project will have a pollinator habitat area, native plantings, lots of signage. Obviously, also included in there is obviously the Illinois Prairie Path, like historical ring, as well as informational kiosk. So it checked a lot of the boxes. It's the right timing for the grant, and it could reimburse the city about $10,000. So it's a pretty straightforward application. It's all online. I already have some recommendation letters from DuPage County, Department of Transportation, and the Park District, and the library is supposed to be sending me one this week as well. So those are all our partners in this project, so it's great that they can send something to me as quickly as possible. If the city, though, receives the grant, we would be required to install a small informational sign acknowledging the grant. I've seen other communities put this on the pollinator sign, so when you're talking about the pollinators on the sign, you just say, provided by ComEd and whoever else is participating in the project. We'll also be required to participate in any press conferences or events and be quoted in ComEd literature, publicizing ComEd as a funder of the project, which is all pretty typical for grants. But They have a website that talks about each of the previous grants and how that affected the communities. So I think it's also a good opportunity to showcase our project as well on their site. So I think it's a lot of benefits. It's pretty straightforward application, and so we're asking the committee to direct staff to apply for it. The due date is on the 25th of March.
Great. And I hope the monarch butterflies get a mention too. That would be nice, and maybe the pollinators themselves too.
Pollinators, yes.
Any questions or comments, Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, just real quickly. So this is money that's already in the budget. We're not going to be creating more expenses to get the grant. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments, Alderman Goodman?
Apply for all the grants. This is my suggestion. I would like to make a motion to direct staff to apply for the 2022 ComEd Green Region Program Grant for the Trailhead project.
Second, Alderman Lockett.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. I don't see any other comments or questions, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you for all your hard work on this project and coordinating and collaborating with ComEd. It's not always easy.
Thank you.
But you're seeing it through. Appreciate that. Our next item is to discuss the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget, and City Administrator John Coakley will lead this discussion.
Thank you. As you all know, on Saturday was the annual City Council Budget Workshop in this room, Saturday morning. The budget was distributed about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago today. I'm getting my dates a little bit off. The very beginning of March. And there's a lot of discussion. There's been a few questions that were presented to the Finance Director, Dahlstrand, and I preceding the budget workshop. We are available this week if any aldermen are interested in scheduling meetings or getting a hold of us. We do have one alderman that has already gotten on that schedule. We'll certainly be able to answer questions going forward too if there's something, but we try to set the week ahead and after the budget workshop to be a little bit more available if you have time that you want to come in and meet and go over specific things. That could also be done with phone calls or virtual meetings. But the budget is here, and this time is primarily assigned just to continue that discussion or answer questions. There's nothing the staff is here to present tonight, but if there are questions or comments back from the budget workshop or things you'd like us to continue working on, there will also be opportunities. This will be included on the agenda for the next two committee of the whole meetings prior to the adoption. The second council meeting in April is when we're required to have a budget adopted before May 1st, start of the next fiscal year. So if there's questions, now's a good time.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay, well, you're off the hook. Easy enough.
It was my presentation, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the preparation, and obviously the meeting was very thorough and informative on Saturday, and there's not that many questions. The mayor has a comment, I believe.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the meeting on Saturday was a full 3 hours of discussion. So anybody who's listening who thinks that we don't go through these things in details, we certainly do. And it was a full 3 hours of questions and answers and examination of all the various funds and our revenue sources and our expenses, and it was a great meeting. So a lot of discussion takes place, not necessarily here. So when you see us pass this along, that just means we did a good job Saturday.
Thank you, Mayor. The next item is to review and file the Community Development Department's fiscal year 2022 work program update. And I don't know if Director Menser has anything that he'd like to introduce or talk about with this item, but if you do, go ahead. If not, we'll ask for the council if they have questions or comments.
The only thing I would point out is that we've been busy. There are things that are on the work program that unfortunately have been deferred or delayed until next year, or we just haven't had the opportunity to get to, and that is a direct outgrowth of both having some new staff, quite a few new staff members in the department that we've been working to onboard effectively, and then we had the senior planner position that was vacant for most all of fiscal year 2022 until just at the beginning of the year. So that not having that position full has had a dramatic impact on what we've been able to accomplish. That being said, we have accomplished a lot. So I think it's a lot of good things are moving forward in the community, both from a private sector standpoint, and the city is moving forward on a variety of very important initiatives, projects that will have a lasting positive impact. So even though we didn't get everything done that we wanted to, we've got a lot done that will make a meaningful difference in the community.
Great, thank you. Alderman Davalos.
Yeah, I want to clarify something. So the coal tar ordinance is in community development, right? That's where it is? That's where it lives? Okay.
That's where it lives.
Okay. So today I received, I'm going to put on my Environmental Advisory Commission hat here, and I received a very detailed list of dates, I guess coming from you, with what all is going on and when the ordinance is done and when this, and all the way up until the end of the year next spring. I was thrilled to get this, but is it from you guys?
Yeah, it was produced by David Ramiro. He's the
great.
staff
It looked really good.
liaison, and you know what's really good about that is it gives the Environmental Advisory Commission
Right.
and you as a city council member an understanding of all the back end work that needs to go into actually effectively implementing something of that nature. It's easy to say, yeah, this is a good thing for the community and let's adopt an ordinance, but in order to actually effectively implement that ordinance in a responsible manner, there's a lot of work that needs to go in and systems that need to be set up, and as reflected in that timeline of basically work elements that need to be accomplished. It's going to take us a while to get to that point, balancing that among all the other competing priorities and items that require our attention. It is going to take longer to get the ordinance implemented, so we're looking at implementing getting the ordinance adopted sooner than later, but getting everything set up to begin implementation of the ordinance next January.
Yes, I was excited about it because one of the things I think I have a role on, and maybe other people on their commissions, is explaining the city process for getting things on work plans and that you just can't vote, that it's a process. So this is going to be really helpful, but it's also very exciting to see it on paper. So
Yeah.
whoever worked on all that, I think it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of education that's going to go on before we do this, before we end to the end, so people know. So I think it's been a very successful process, even though I know it takes time, but I know it takes time.
Yeah.
And so now everybody else can know it takes time. But it's exciting to feel like the city's behind you. And so I just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
And make sure it
we'll
was from
pass
you
it on
guys.
to David Ramiro. He's
Okay.
the staff person that's making it all happen. He's working hard on it. He's
Yeah.
doing a really
Yeah.
good job. He's a newer liaison to the Environmental
Yeah, no,
Advisory
yeah, he is
Commission,
doing a good job.
he's committed to it and he's helping to educate.
Yeah.
And
Anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you both for your involvement and leadership with this issue, and I always like the fact that you got time to educate people before you start enforcing something, because the word will get out that, you know, we're only going to put down certain kinds of coal tar, and that there'll be preferences given to the ones that are less toxic, and we can put the word out on that and do the education process before it actually becomes an enforcement issue. So appreciate that. Alderman Goodman.
Hi. One thing that caught my eye in this, and that it says it's the very last priority item, T34, to begin the process to update the comprehensive land use plan. And it says we are reevaluating the timing and priority of this project as part of the fiscal year 23 budget work plan process. I just don't remember us talking about it. Possibly I've missed it. I know that there's a state law requiring us to have a comprehensive land use plan, and I think there might even be one requiring us to update it every 20 years? I don't know, 25. Maybe there's some law about that, I don't know. But can you talk about that a little bit? Do you know what the legal requirements are, and are we in danger of being late on them?
I'm not aware of any specific, like time period, 20 years. The city has updated, I mean, the core foundation of our land use plan is old, and a lot of the information's outdated, but the city has updated the comprehensive plan twice since I've been here. We went through the planning process to develop the Old Town Civic Center subarea plan. That was an adopted as an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the Old Town Civic Center subarea, and then we did the same for the Southwest District. So when we developed the work program for this year, fiscal year 2022, and the item that you're speaking was a discussion internally from the staff perspective to try to understand priorities and where this fit into the priorities from our perspective. And what we've determined going into fiscal 23, that we didn't have really the staff resources or didn't feel comfortable with presenting a budget request. It'd probably be somewhere well over $100,000, somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 to advance that. We felt that there was other higher priorities, and we still expect there to be a very high level of private development happening in the community this coming year. A lot of the things that got permitted now we're still going to be dealing with and closing out, and so we just didn't feel like we would have the capacity to do that effectively, so we did not include that in our fiscal year 23 work plan. That was part of my budget, was distributed with my budget presentation. It is on the list of things that we need to keep track of, and I do think it's something that the city will need to revisit in the coming years, and probably within the next 3 or 4 years, definitely move forward with doing an overall comprehensive plan revision process, most likely after updating the strategic plan.
Okay, I could be entirely wrong about there being some law about the timing of that. I do not know. I was just speaking from a vague memory about this. I know that we don't have an updated one and that we are required to have one. That's all. So I just don't want us to be
Yeah, I'm
pushing
not aware of
something
any state statutory requirement for a specific time period.
back. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you for the report on this. That was an informational report, and we certainly gained a lot of information regarding the work program, so appreciate that. And our next item is to review and file the Economic Development Activity Report. And are there any questions or comments for Director Menser on this? If not, we will go ahead and file that. Thank you. And then our last item on this evening's agenda is an informational item too. It's to review and file the always excellent bi-monthly code enforcement activity report. Are there any questions or comments that you want to make regarding that, Director Menser?
I don't have anything specific. I could address questions if there are any.
Any questions? Okay. That's all for this evening. There's one more major item to take care of, Director Goodman, or Alderman Goodman.
No promotions, please. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.